Welcome to Writings, Chats, and Friends. This is your host today. My name is Monica Brinkman. If this is your first time here, and as always, my wonderful, wonderful co-host and host, Mr. Kenneth Ween. Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Today, I'm really, really excited to introduce you to an author. But before I do that, Ken has a little bit to say via some poetry prose.
Hey, well, yeah. Our guest today is Sherrie Miranda, who's written a book, Crimes and Impunity in New Orleans. And I am telling you this because the poem I'd like to read with you for you today, folks, is from a New Orleans poet, Brad Richard, and it's called The Missing Skull. Where is his skull? A man's mother asked. The man was burned in a car. 2 men found it. By the river, a corpse shot in the head. The police did this. After the autopsy, what remained fit in 2 vinyl bags. But how could you lose his skull? How can I bury my son? She had to bury her son without his head. Henry Glover, his skull wrapped in newspaper, in a box, in an attic winter and summer. I can't stop imagining now. 10 winters and summers, among holiday ornaments, old uniforms, trophies, the plates, the jaw, the teeth, the bullet hole. Roaches and silverfish have eaten the box. Wasps have chewed the newspaper for nests built elsewhere. And this is as far as I can go, ant haunting this broken dome.
Wow, that's like Dahmer.
The key line here is the police did this.
Yes. There is one thing, and Sherrie, welcome to the show. This is Sherrie Miranda. And I want to let you know that I didn't read the whole book, but I have read part of her book that we're going to be talking about today. And it's, as Ken said, it's called Crimes and Impunities in New Orleans. There was one thing that struck me about you, Sherrie, and that's why you write. And you said you write to bring more peace and understanding within the world. And that's one thing that Ken and I always support. I want to let everybody know that this story, it's going to show some good things, but it's also going to show things that we can build on stopping in our world. And I think many a person is going to relate to some of the things that have happened. But I wanted to ask you, first of all, Sherrie, why did you decide to place your story in New Orleans?
Well, I lived there for 7 years, and it was the reason why I ended up going to Salvador, which is part of my second book. After I finished the Salvador book, I realized I had a very important story about New Orleans. In fact, this is about 75 to 80% true of my own life. But I made it fictional to continue this series that I'm writing. And I didn't want to get that close to having it be actually a memoir anyway.
Yes, but at least it gets it. Well, one of the things that struck me was you get right into the action on your book. You know, it starts out a little bit explaining, you know, who the heroine, I guess we would call her, Shelly, is. But what happens to her immediately after she graduates and moves to New Orleans is, I'm not going to give away all your book, but she does get raped. Now, the thing that struck me about this book is I think many a female has gone through this. Many are silent about it. And you caught the true feelings of what someone actually feels when this happens to them. All the doubts, all the guilt. And I wondered, because in your particular story, this young gal actually has an abortion. And I'm thinking, what if she lived in places like Texas today?
Yeah.
What would this gal do? What would she have done?
Good question. I have no idea.
And I mean, she was an innocent person who got attacked, raped, and now she's pregnant. And she's young, her whole life ahead of her. And I think the way that you brought this topic up, or issue that we have today in our world, was very well done. And I wish that people who are even against abortion would read this, because they would actually feel the feelings that she went through when that happened. And I'm only telling you about that part because it's in the beginning of the book, because I'm not going to give away other things that I read. But
yeah, it's actually before she goes to New Orleans. It's the reason,
yes, before she goes,
that she does go there, just to get away from those memories.
Yeah, but one of the problems is that, because, as with so many young women who have abortions, that she was not given any good counseling, because she's ashamed, because she can't seek help. And that sets her up in a way for what happens to her in New Orleans, because one of the things that happens very often to rape victims is they get raped again. And part of the reason, and often they end up using alcohol or other drugs inappropriately. And that's often because they can't cope with the fact that they were raped, can't cope with the fact perhaps that they had an abortion. And, they, without some kind of psychological and social support, it just sets them up to act incredibly naively. And that's the thing that struck me about Shelly, is that she gets to New Orleans and she's very bright, very talented, but incredibly naive. And here she is in a city that is a hotbed of crime and substance abuse, and I suppose all cities to some degree are like that, but New Orleans really lends itself to that. There's a darkness to New Orleans. Now, I didn't live there for 7 years. I've only been there to visit, but I found New Orleans to have this sense of darkness and broodingness that kind of goes back in time. It's just like you feel it. And of course, the swamps around it and the high levees and all of that don't help at all. So have you been to New Orleans, Monica?
No, I've always wanted to go, but I never have been.
Yeah.
Of course, the Mardi Gras,
Well, actually, interesting. I like the way you dealt with the Mardi Gras, Shelly. You kind of made it a negative thing. Most people, when they think of New Orleans, they think of the Mardi Gras as this wonderful, hey, and for the people who live there, it can be kind of very painful.
Yeah, a lot of New Orleanians go out of town during Mardi Gras.
Mhm.
And, I personally wasn't a fan, because I am like Shelly, a bit claustrophobic, and I'm not a lover of huge crowds.
Right.
And then just things that I saw, and so I had Shelly see or hear similar stories about Mardi Gras. So she was glad to get out of there before it was in full swing, because Mardi Gras actually lasts a few weeks.
Yes.
So it's, but the last day, Mardi Gras day, there's no traffic. there's no streetcars. Wherever you end up, you're pretty much stuck there unless you can walk to wherever you want to go.
Mhm.
That crowded him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, and also, of course, there are all the parades going on and events,
Right.
so that
I think well, back then there were at least 20 parades.
Yeah.
Leading up to, and then Mardi Gras Day, there's several parades.
Right. Yeah, people think it's one parade, but it isn't.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
And yeah, I think if I lived in New Orleans, I too would get out of town for that.
And yeah, well, I finally did some research because I heard about second lines. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No.
Well, it's they talk about it with funerals. When there's a funeral of a Black person, there's a band that plays. So
Right.
they call that second line. But when I did research, I found out second line was actually all the Black musicians after the white parade. They could follow behind and play their music and march. So that's why
It is still an incredibly segregated city. Still is very segregated. And the first line of defense, as it has been so many places in the United States, the first line of defense of segregation are the police. And in New Orleans, the police, as you might have picked up from the poem I read by Brad Richard, let's say not there to protect and serve.
Yeah.
And while it is primarily in the service of segregation and racism, they also are not adverse to raping a white girl or taking advantage of a white girl or stealing from a white guy, or it's I won't say it's equal opportunity crime, but it's a pretty bad news police department historically.
Yeah, and for white people, especially if you're not from there, they basically figure you're nobody, so they can do what they want.
And we also have the shops with the voodoo shops and those type of things that have been there forever. In fact, Ken, I think we interviewed someone who actually wrote about that years ago. What type of things about New Orleans would surprise people, do you think?
Well, there's a line in the book, but I heard this more than once about the Lori is the name where she stays, and she tells Shelly that New Orleans is the kind of place that you love one minute and you hate the next. Nobody ever feels neutral about New Orleans. So that's
a very good explanation. It really is. I love it.
You don't do much with the food in New Orleans, and of course New Orleans is famous for its food, and yet for the most part the food that is eaten is really not New Orleans food in particular. There's some stuff from Central America that's eaten that sounds pretty good, but Shelly doesn't make it to the good restaurants, does she?
Oh no, she has no money. It's crazy what she did, and it's crazy what I did, going there with nothing, and it's amazing that they survived and as well as they did, and so the Shelly only gets to try the food, New Orleans food, if she's working in a restaurant that's serving it. So I can't remember now. I think I mentioned oh shoot, what's it called? The gumbo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned that. But yeah, it's true. I don't mention a lot of the food in there because she didn't get to try much of it.
Yeah, I have to say, I think it's the only novel I have read set in New Orleans where nobody is drinking coffee and eating beignets a lot.
Oh,
Shelly couldn't do that either. Maybe the coffee.
But okay, and she manages to not particularly enjoy the French Quarter.
yeah.
Which is, it's interesting. I've stayed in the French Quarter,
Oh,
and
really?
it's quite beautiful.
Yeah,
And,
it is architecturally, it's
yeah,
gorgeous.
gorgeous. And when you're walking around, in the early evening before people are totally blotto, and you have people playing, and maybe you grab a drink, and you can walk down the street there with a cocktail, and you're listening to jazz bands and rock bands and whatever. It's really quite delightful. But the dark side of it is right there, and you feel it.
Yeah.
The other thing Shelley doesn't mention is the cemeteries.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, and it's fascinating because it's not like that anywhere else in the United States,
Right.
that the bodies are above the ground. And
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The cemeteries are good. The cemeteries of New Orleans are almost as beautiful as the architecture in the French Quarter.
yeah.
Really, it's
I wonder what reason it was for them to bury people above
the
ground,
water level.
Yeah.
water level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
In
mean,
fact, there have been floods where there's been dead bodies floating
Well-
around.
yeah.
That come up because of the water. Wow. That would be spooky.
Yeah.
So there are some beautiful churches there. And I guess the reason I'm saying this is I don't want to get a bad rep with the Chamber of Commerce in New Orleans. It is a fascinating town to visit. I just wouldn't want to live there, especially if I didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which is
And
what Shelly found herself in
just-
this.
now Shelley is there, but she's not there just to run away from upstate New York. This is a prequel. You had written, there's another book that actually you'd written first, right?
Yes.
And that book is about what Shelley does after New Orleans, which is she goes to basically document the fighting in El Salvador.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, she goes to document the people. She tries to stay away from the fighting in El Salvador. But yeah, she went to New Orleans to prepare to go to El Salvador. She was promised that this church group would pay for her time in El Salvador. It turned out she had to fight for that.
Nothing comes easy for Shelly, does it?
No.
Let's stop there for a minute because, I thought this was a very interesting twist. But it isn't that nothing comes easy for Shelley. It's that Shelley makes it so nothing comes easy. So, for example, she shows up without her full array of photography. She's an excellent photographer, and she brings only her family photographs and none of the work that she's won prizes for.
Right.
She comes totally unprepared to actually present herself in the world. And that's getting back to this, that she so lacked any sense of control in her life. And that, of course, goes back, and we don't want, there's some great backstory, her family, her education. So, you understand better. But it's an interesting psychological portrait of something that in shrink talk we call paranoid masochism, which is basically you walk down the street tripping yourself.
But she certainly learned a lot, I must say.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
You have copies of the books with you? Sherry?
Yes.
Hold them up. Okay. This is the New Orleans book.
Yes.
Oh, I think you got that backwards. Yeah. And this is and what is the title of what is the title? Okay, we have Crimes and Impunity in New Orleans, and the other one, the title is
Secrets and Lies in El Salvador.
Secrets and Lies in El Salvador. Now, I want to mention that I'm not going to, I don't want to give away here because it's really interesting. But in New Orleans, Shelly finds out that she may have a personal connection to El Salvador. And that becomes a very fascinating.
Actually, she finds that out before she goes.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, she, and then she learns more about that possible connection from a Salvadoran in New Orleans. Right. So there are Central Americans in the story of New Orleans too. And then she's also very active in the anti-war movement against Central Americans. And so things happen to her because of that.
Of course. So, I was going to get to that. I don't know, folks, if you remember the wars that the United States was involved in, trying to back dictators, basically. I mean, as Monica and I have said a number of times, that sadly, the United States foreign policy seems to be more to back dictators than to promote democracy. And then we get all bent out of shape when a country isn't democratic that we want to, that we don't like the dictator in. So
that's why I really recommend your books, because they bring out reality that things have been hidden for quite a while. And I think until people realize what's going on, you're not going to change it. You're not going to fix it.
Right. Right. You can't turn a blind eye and then somehow make it better. So that's something I encounter on a daily basis on the internet. Like somebody's speaking about, like, for instance, women, Black women with cancer. They're talking about how they're treated differently. And then some nurse comes on and says, oh, no, they're treated the same. Well, no, they don't have access to that same quality care. So that nurse never saw the ones that didn't have the money to get that quality
exactly
care.
Yeah. Michelle Obama gets the best care. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But
they can say that.
Black woman doesn't. The other thing that is that even in places where they do have availability of care, there are biases built in. One of them is that if you look at the pain meds given to Black women for various things, whether it's at time of giving birth or having cancer treatment or whatever it is, you look at the pain meds they're given, it's lower doses than white women are given. And obviously the built-in bias, well, you're Black, so you can take more pain.
I know. That's ridiculous.
Sometimes I think it's on purpose. Like they just want to punish us, especially recently with the cases against Big Pharma. It's like they want to punish us for punishing them, basically.
Absolutely. But geez, please check out Sherrie Miranda's books, because they're going to take you on adventures that you've never been before.
Right.
They're going to introduce you to places and people that you may never realize were, even in existence. And it's a book that from the start is going to draw your interest.
Now, Monica is going to have links, of course, in the show description. Please check out Sherrie's blog and her Amazon page so that you can buy one or both of the books. They are available in print and on Kindle. And also, I think, Monica, don't you have something special from Sherrie for the end.
Yes, and this is exciting. Sherrie actually has music that was written specifically for the book. And we're going to be sharing that with you next on this. Folks, please check out Sherrie Miranda. She's on Amazon. We will have some links where you can read a little bit more about this. On Amazon, you can go to take a look and read about it, and you'll see what we mean about it starting out exciting.
Sherrie, thank you so much for joining us on Writings, Chats, and Friends.
Thank you.
And folks, you're going to enjoy this. Here you go. Thank you, Sherrie.
Thank you. Take care.
You
You
too.
too.